We are developing a program that we're calling Embodied Leadership. And this program, we got started on this idea out of work I did around what we call somatic imaging, which was I began to do research, everything from interpersonal neurobiology to evolutionary psychology, and Paul Ekman's work on the face. We started to really understand that there was so much information in the embodied form of communication, that we could learn a lot about a person's relationships. We could learn a lot about what had happened to them, where their traumas were, what was important to them, just from really attending to the body. That took us on a, then of course we're doing systemic work, so we start to look at how bodies and systems behave, if you will, the non-mind part of us, not the mental mind. And actually there's research now, Tim Wilson's book, The Adaptive Unconscious, Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, there's all this stuff that's come out that shows that we really have two minds. We have a somatic mind, we have an embodied mind. It thinks differently, it attends to the now, it's present, it's aware of your relationships all the time because this is a social self. We need each other to survive. And we have a mind self. And of course the mind is verbal, it thinks in terms of concepts and ideas. It's the part of us that can plan ahead, it can design a bridge and organize the somatic processes needed to build the bridge. So both of those aspects of ourselves are really important. In organizations, though, we tend to forget about the embodied self. We think that we can solve all our problems with the storytelling mind self. And we don't value or privilege the wisdom that our somatic self has. So this is the part of us that's living 24/7 in relationship, that knows what's going on, that responds to the frown on my boss's face. The mind will make up stories about that later. But this is the part of us that has a real visceral and true understanding of what's going on in the social worlds that we live in. And this is the part that often is in contact with a systemic understanding, because your body self experiences itself in relationship. That's how you know who you are. So this part of us has got a certain perspective, it's got wisdom, but it's not something that our mind self has very good access to. Mind self is language-based, picture-based. Okay, this is feeling-based. This is my gut reaction when I see, the smile or the frown on your face. And what happens if I see that day in and day out? How do I respond? And how do I position myself relative to you when I see that? I mean, it's very visceral kind of understanding of another human being. But this part of us has to navigate, literally navigate through our world. It has to engage in those relationships, and it knows things. It has understandings of things. It just has a hard time telling that to your mind. So your somatic self may have the sense that your boss is thinking of replacing you, even though not a word has been said. But it's the stomach ache that you get. It's this part of you that's picked up something is wrong here in this relationship. I don't know what it is, and I'm having a reaction. The mind may be telling great stories, about the boss is happy with what I've done or whatever, and not see what's coming, But there's a part of us that does know. It's just tuned in. So the question is, if this part of us is really plugged into our system, if it really knows kind of what's going on in a larger day-to-day living it way, how can we create a bridge with that knowledge to the mind self, to what our mind knows, to the thinking, planning, storytelling, picture-making self? And constellation work, we discovered, was that bridge. It allows us to let your somatic self, this part of you that's living in relationships, that has that gut sense of what's going on, even though your mind doesn't know what the problem is, it allows this part of you to actually speak in native language. Bodies speak in terms of how close are we? Are you looking at me? What's the expression on your face? How are we standing in relationship? And we actually say in many languages, where do you stand with so-and-so? Okay, so there's a very literal, how close are you? Can you touch? Can you see? Are you facing the same direction or different directions? So we have a way of understanding relationships that we need to make accessible to the mind. So that the mind, when you as an executive or a business owner are making decisions, you're dealing with a full deck. You have that systemic understanding as well as the conceptual and intellectual aspects of solving problems. Constellation work allows us to do this by letting the body make a picture, whether that's these little cute relationships things or other tools that we may use, or people, just having a person represent your department or the project or the employee with whom you're having a difficulty, and you. So we actually create an image where you get to see yourself within the context of the living system that you're trying to manage. As soon as we do that, we literally sort of take you out, but leave you in at the same time. So there's a representative for you, and you get to step outside and see you in that system. And you get a view of how all those parts and pieces are working together. So I've used the metaphor of a spider web, where you have this web of relationships. And that's really what an organization is. Managers do not manage people, they manage the relationships between people. That's what you have to influence. You try to influence a person, but the medium through which you do that is the relationship you have with them. So when we understand that it's this web of relationships that makes an organization high functioning or not, then we have to go in and see what's happening in that web. And if you've ever plucked one corner of a web, you know that it affects the whole thing. So to try and just replace a person to solve a problem, let's say that manager is not doing a good job, I'm just going to replace them, that doesn't work. It just affects the whole web in a negative way. So really to solve the complex problems that managers and executives and business owners face today, they need a systemic tool. And oftentimes those managers know a lot. They have a gut feeling for the systems that they're responsible for. But they have no way to let that gut feeling become explicit, to make a picture out of it, a living picture maybe of people standing and representing aspects of that, or just even these little relationships. So constellation work is a bridge. It's an unfortunate name, constellation work. It sounds like astrology, and it's nothing like that. It's really a systemic tool. And it's a holistic, generative tool that enables managers to really capture the whole picture, the history, the key elements. Even, like I said, it could be something that happened before you came into that organization that still has an after effect. So we call this the founder effect. The founder may be gone, but there's still a tail left from that, a long tail. So this allows us to capture that whole system and to understand the dynamics at work from that perspective, and to influence using that your role in that web of relationships to influence that web to change course or to change shape so that it can function better in terms of achieving the goal.